The theorist that I have is Jacob Kounin, and his model is the instructional management technique. Um, so, a little bit about Jacob Kounin. He was a classroom behaviorist theorist. He was most well known for his two case studies in 1970 that he did in his own classroom. He was the author of Discipline and Group Management in Classrooms, and he believed that being well organized and proper planning is the key to keeping students engaged, which is basically the whole background of his theory and what he was trying to do. Um, so his theory is based on preventative discipline, and here are the key ideas. There's the ripple effect, which the ripple effect is basically um, saying that like when what you correct one student, then the actions of the other students will follow after that correction. He also talked about with itness in his theory, overlapping, and movement management, which is broken down into smoothness and momentum, and then group focus and accountability. So again, the ripple effect. This is something that he observed in his own classroom. He saw that once he corrected one student, then that correction influenced the way that the other students behaved. Um, he he believed in naming behavior and why it was wrong, and then saying that that deterred others from doing the same behavior. So, for example, if a student spoke without raising their hand, he would say, "Please raise your hand before you speak," and then that in turn would make other students raise their hands before they ever um, like needed that correction. So with itness is a word that he basically made up to for this point, and it basically is just awareness of what's going on in your classroom as a teacher. He said that it's important for a teacher to either know everything that's going on in the classroom or at least make your students think that you know everything. It's like the eyes in the back of your head theory. And then it's important to keep students within eyesight at all times. So that has to do with how you set up your classroom, the way that you navigate around your classroom too. And then proposing alternative behaviors quickly and efficiently is also a part of with itness. So whenever you see something happening, say something as soon as you see it, and then propose an alternative behavior, which also has to do with the ripple effect and what happens after that. Overlapping is the next part of his theory. Multitasking well is a big part of overlapping and evenly splitting attention between two different things. What's important with overlapping is body language, making comments, giving reminders, and then also um, just a part of it is that students work better when the teacher is watching. So overlapping is really like about the flow of what you're doing. It's about making sure that whenever you're transitioning and from one thing into the other, you can put your focus on both of those things and put them together and have the flow of that go smoothly. Um, then there's movement management. This was the smoothness and momentum. Um, One thing to help a teacher do that is practice their transition times, see how they're going to get into the next thing that they're going to. Setting clear expectations for your students and for yourself as a teacher with what you want, how fast you're going to go into the next thing, and things like that. Consider the flow of the lessons. How does this lesson about math flow into this lesson about English? And then keeping students engaged throughout that whole entire time. And then connect each task, which is basically the same thing. Group focus and accountability. Engage the entire group in all answers and activities. So a really big part of this theory is that if you're prepared enough with your lesson and your students stay engaged enough throughout the whole time, then they won't get in trouble. And that's the way that you can manage your classroom. So engaging the entire group in all answers and all activities, letting multiple different students answer questions and stuff like that, keeps the entire group engaged and therefore keeps people out of trouble. Set challenges for the class to work through as a unit. That is also an important part of his theory, is that if your students are challenged, then they won't get bored. Therefore, they won't have behavior issues. Create group tasks so students can work together. That also just keeps them engaged. And then let students answer each other's questions. So if one student proposes a question, have others say, what does the class think? And have other students answer. And then the roles. Um, the important roles for the teacher in this theory are paying attention, keeping flow of the classroom and keeping flow in transitions, keeping students involved, intervening before behavior escalates, and multitasking. And then the student roles are kind of different because for this theory, basically it's all about how prepared the teacher is and how much the teacher can like keep students engaged. So the whole idea is that if the teacher is doing these things that they need to do, then the student will be well behaved, will be engaged, and will be learning. Um, so going back for a second to that, whenever I was looking at all this stuff, I couldn't really find any research either supporting or disproving this exact theory, but I found research supporting other theories that were similar to this one, saying that they worked really well and that this is a like solid way to go about trying to manage your classroom. So yeah. Classroom application. The way to apply this to your classroom, implement it, is to be aware of what's happening in the classroom really at all times. Using routines to make transitions flow smoothly. Keeping students involved with constant supervision and accountability. Being able to attend more than one event at a time. Being able to attend to more than one event at a time, and it's most effective when applied from the beginning of the school year. This was also a really big part of this theory, is that this isn't something that you can just like start picking up in the middle of the school year and expect students to catch on with it. It's something that from the very first day of class you establish that this is the way that things are going to be. I'm paying attention to everything that's happening, and keeping the students engaged from the very beginning keeps them from having behavioral issues, and then you having to go back and try to implement it. Advantages and disadvantages. So advantages of this method are the plan essentially makes classroom management simple, because the whole idea, again, is that if you do this, students won't misbehave. It relies on student reactions, not decisions. So students don't have a chance to decide, hey, I'm going to go do this, because they're engaged the entire time in class. And so if something happens that they like start to act up or something like that, it's the student reacting to what you're doing, not them deciding in their spare time, which they wouldn't have in this theory, to like make a bad decision. And then it also just creates a well-planned classroom, because if a teacher is having their students do this and this and this in order with a good flow, everything is challenging, keeping the students engaged, then, I mean, you have to have, like, it has to be well-planned for this theory to work. Some disadvantages. Responsibility is pretty much fully on the teachers in this theory to make sure that they have all of their stuff together so that their students don't misbehave or get bored or have downtime or anything like that. I personally could see it potentially overwhelming the teachers, having everything so methodically planned out and so prepared. Not that you shouldn't be prepared as a teacher, but I could see that maybe it could get a little bit overwhelming with this exact theory. And then it may leave teachers with less flexibility, because if you're so worried about making sure that everything happens right when it's supposed to happen, everything is flowing smoothly and stuff like that, then if something does happen and you get thrown a curveball, then I feel like maybe a teacher wouldn't be as prepared for that. And so it could like mess with the flow of your classroom if something doesn't go as planned. So reactions. My personal reaction, I really think that this is a pretty like solid plan to implement into your classroom, especially for maybe like younger students, because younger students have a tendency to get distracted more easily, just because they're like growing and their minds are growing. So I could say that this would be really helpful, but also I just think that this is a really good theory because it is important for teachers to be well planned, to have everything like set so that their students are getting the best quality of education with like as efficiently as possible, and not having disruptions in class because of like behavior issues and stuff like that helps achieve that, and it helps your students really get that and get what they need. um, yeah, so that is all that I have. My handout is kind of like a prequel to this whole PowerPoint. It's really just to see if you agree or disagree, or how strongly you agree or disagree with the different parts of this theory. So, yeah, thank you.